संसारदावानललिढलोका त्राणाय कारुण्या घना घना त्वम् संसारदावानललिढलोका त्राणाय कारुण्या घना घना त्वम् प्राप्तस्य कल्याणा गुणार्णवस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् महाप्रभु कीर्तन नृत्य गीता वादित्रमाध्यान् मनसोरसेना रोमाञ्चकम्पाश्रुतरङ्गभाजो वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रुतरङ्गभाज वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीविग्रहाराधन नित्यनाना शृङ्गारतान् मन्दिरमार्चनादो नित्यनाना शृङ्गारतान् मन्दिरमार्चनादो युक्तस्य भक्तं च नियुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् भक्तं शैनुञ्जतोऽपि वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् चतुर्विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसादो साध्वन्न तृप्तान् हरिभक्तसङ्घान् विधा श्रीभगवत्प्रसादो हरिभक्तसङ्घान् कृत्वैव तृप्तिं भजत सदैव वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् श्रीराधिका माधवयोरपारा माधुर्यलीला गुणरूपनाम्नां टीका माधवयोरपारा लीला गुणरूपनाम्ना प्रतिक्षणा स्वाधनलोलुपस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् निकुञ्जयूनो रतिकेलिसिद्धै यायालिभिरुक्तिरपेक्षणीया यायालिभिरुक्तिरपेक्षणीया तत्रातिदाक्षादतिवल्लभस्य वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणरविन्दम् साक्षाद्धरित्विना समस्तशास्त्रै उक्तस्तथा भाव्यत एव सद्भिः त्विना समस्तशास्त्रै उक्तस्तथा भाव्यत चरणारविन्दम् रहा प्रिय एव तस्या वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दं यस्य प्रसादात् भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादान् नगति कुतोऽपि भगवत्प्रसादो यस्य प्रसादात् नगति कुतोऽपि ध्यायन्स्तुवांस्तस्या यशस्त्रिसन्ध्यां वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् 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 श्रीचरणारविन्दम् वन्दे गुरो श्रीचरणारविन्दम् नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनिति नामिने नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्ता स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरा भक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe, Radha Nila Madhava, Radha Nila Madhava Radhe, Jaya Radha Nila Madhava, Radha Nila Madhava Radhe, Radha Nila Madhava, Radha Nila Madhava Radhe, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jai Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham, Jai Radhe, Jai Jai Shyam, Jai Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Ram Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jayo Jagannatha, Jayo Jagannatha, Jayo बलदेवा जय सुभद्रमया जय जगन्नाथा जय जगन्नाथा जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्र जय सीताराम जय सीताराम सीताराम जय लक्ष्मण हनुमान ओ सीताराम जय सीताराम सीताराम जय लक्ष्मण हनुमान जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह नित्य गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल जय जय प्रभुपा 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 जय जय प्रभुपा 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 जय जय प्रभुपा जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव।
नमस्ते नरसिंहाय प्रह्लादलाददायिने हिरण्यकशिपूर्वक्षः शीलटङ्कानकालये हितो नरसिंह परतो नरसिंह यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंह बाह्ये नरसिंह हृदये नरसिंह नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरेणकाम् अद्भुतशृङ्गा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तानुभृङ्गा केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे अद्भुत शृंगार दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तानुभृङ्गा केशवदीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवद्रीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव देव गुरुदेव गुरुदेव जय जय गुरुदेव विघ्न विनाशक लक्ष्मी नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की
वृंदाय तुलसीदेव्याय प्रियाय केशवच विष्णुभक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय तुलसीदेव्याय प्रियाय केशवच विष्णुभक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदाय प्रियाय केशवच विष्णुभक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः वृंदा देवी तुलसी महारानी की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी। जे तुम्हारा शरण लो तारा वांछ पूर्ण हो। तारा वांछ पूर्ण हो। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी। मोराये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नायने हरि बो सदा जुगल रूप राशि। ये निवेदन धरो सखीर अनुगत करो। सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी। दीना कृष्ण दासे को ये न मोरा होय। श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी। श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी। नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे। यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी जय वृंदा देवी नित्य गौरा हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल तुलसी देवी महारानी की जय।
वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय केशवस्य विष्णु भक्ति पदे देवी सत्यवत्याय नमो नमः। दुर्गा देवी तुलसी महारानी की Oh, Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow down before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow mercy upon him and make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you always grant me a residence in the treasure grove of Shri Vrindavan town. Thus within my vision I shall always behold the beautiful pastime of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of confidence of the Virgin. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love of Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam Ki Jai. Cheto Darpana Marjanam Papa Mahatavagni Nirvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Punarmita Sadhanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nitya Sarva Vajam Manijam Manishware Bhavata Bhaktir Hai Sukhi Chai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mang Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stitha Duri Sadesham Vichintaya Nayanam Garadashru Darya Vadanam Gadgada Rudaya Gira Pulaka Nishtam Vapurkada Tava Nama Grahane Bhavishyati Yuga Itam Nimishena Chashusha Prarisha Itam Shunya Itam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Ashrisava Padaratam Pinnastumam Adarshana Marmahatam Karotuva Yatha Tatha Vitatatu Lampato Madprana Natha Susa Eva Na Paraha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Chaitanya Shastakam Ki Jai. Glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which brings heart of all the girls accumulated over years and extinguished fire of conditional life. Repeat the birth and death. Control transcend knowledge. It increases ocean transcend bliss, enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. Oh my Lord, your holy name alone grant all benediction to me. Thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendent names you have invested our transcendent energy. There are no even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord. Out of kindness enable us to easily approach you by holy name. And so important, have no attraction. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than one's going street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, Almighty Lord, I have no desire to kill men, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O Samarjananda, I'm your eternal servant, yet somehow or other have fallen into the ocean birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean death and place me as one of the items of devotees. Oh my Lord, while my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant the holy name, when will my voice choke up, when will hair my body stand on end at recitation of your name. Oh Govinda, feeling of separation, I'm constantly the moment to be like my enemies. Tears are flowing from eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by the embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditional. Sri Chaitanya Shastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy names that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme devotees who have dedicated their life for the propagation of the name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Brahma to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or teach pursuance of Vedic virtue. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to the imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, often in Vedas as fruit activities, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about glory of holy name. 10. To not a complete faith in the chanting holy name, and to maintain material attachments even after sending so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to Vaishnava must get for Gargan these sentences. Your Krikachi, desire success, Krishna prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just the dietaries and the fulfilled one, and the show compassion in the following conditions so. Vancha kalpatarubhishta kripa sindhu bhevata patitanam pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Shri Mangala Charana prayers. Om Jnana Timrandasya Yanandana Shalakaya Chakshom Litam
Tabis, Tabir Avani Jurupa Kalabi, Goloka Avani Vasata Kilat Mabuto, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bajami, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilo Chaneno, Santak Sadeva Hide Subila Kanti, Yam Shama Sundarama Chinta Gunaswarupam, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bajami, Ramadi Murti Sukalani Mena Tistam, Nanavatar Makarod Bhuvanesu Kintu, Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pamamyo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhuvato Jagananda Koti Swase Swasudadi Vibhuti Benanta Brahmanis Kalamanantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Mayahi Yasya Jagananda Satani Sute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadvavalam Viparasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmayara Satmatya Manasu Ya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilaya Tena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute Sutesu Te Te Prabhavani Jaya Vitas Jayena Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichana Rupam Apyasya Chitesta Tesa Govinda Madi Purisham Bhajami Priyaram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritagasta Hetu Yasambutam Apitata Savapaiti Karyat Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Departure Evi Dasantanam Abhyapedya Dipayate Vividetu Samanu Dharma Yastadri Gevi Hicha Visnutaya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vijale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidramananta Jagadanda Saroma Kupa Adhara Sakti Mavalambya Param Stramurtim Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaikandi Svasita Kalamata Balambya Jivanti Loma Villaja Jagadanda Nata Vishnu Mahansa Yasya Kalavi Seso Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalesana Jesa Teja Sriyam Kiyap Katayat Pitadradakra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Pada Palavugam Vinidaya Kumbadvande Pranama Samayesa Ganati Raja Vignan Vihanta Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Pada Pala Ragnir Mahigagan Mabumaru Disascha Kalasta Tatma Manasita Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visantiyam Cha Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagala Grahana Raja Samasta Suramurtira Sesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichasrute Astapamsi Brahmadi Kita Patigavati Sajivaha Yadata Mata Vibhava Prakata Brabhava Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Astrinda Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdati Kinchita Bhakti Bhajan Govindam Adi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarava Dramabu Mischintamani Gyanama Itoim Amritam Kataganam Atyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chiranandam Jyoti Parama Pitada Svajama Pija Sayatra Shiradavi Shavati Sharabi Vyasta Sumahan Nime Sardakyo Vavrajitina Yatripi Samaya Bhaje Smita Dipam Tamaham Ego Kamitiam Vedantaste Santakshati Virachara Kati Paye Shri Guru Vastic Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Are from my respectful basin unto Lotus Street is such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities, chanting a holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he is rousing and mellows of pure devotion with his mind. Sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body and tears flow from his eyes like waves. Are from our respectful place down to the Lotus Feet is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Sri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress their deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. Are from my respectful base unto Lotus Street are such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is liquid, drunk, and such. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied with eating Bhagavad Prasad, he is satisfied over my respectful base unto Lotus Street of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Therefore, I offer my respectful base on the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he expert assisting gopis who at different times made different tastes and ranges for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisance on the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all real scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance on the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual man, one receives benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance on the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, and verse number 11. Ata tasya pita tasyaha katidayat dananiha nanabidyanta devanam tanime gatata shrinu. Ata, therefore, tasya, his, abhita tasya, in terms of his contemplation, katida, how many ayatanani, embodiments, ha, there, were, nirabidyanta, by separated parts, devanam, of the demigods, tani, all those, me gadata, described by me, shrinu, just here. Translation by His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Maitreya said, you may now hear from me how the Supreme Lord separated himself into the diverse forms of the demigods after the manifestation of the gigantic universal form. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The demigods are separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, as are all other living entities. The only difference between the demigods and the ordinary living entities is that when the living entities are rich in pious activities of devotional service to the Lord, and when their desire to lord it over material energy has vanished, they are promoted. They are promoted to the posts of demigods who are entrusted by the Lord with executing the management of universal affairs. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There's another interesting statement about the demigods. Let me see where that is. Yeah, I'd have to find that. Well, the other statement earlier in this same chapter says that the demigods still have desire to dominate. Whereas this one says, the only difference between the demigods and the ordinary living entities is that when the living entities are rich in pious acts of devotional service to the Lord, and when their desire to lord it over material nature has vanished, they are promoted to the posts of demigods who are entrusted by the Lord with executing the management of universal affairs. Okay, I'll have to find that. Okay, we'll continue. So we'll go to the next verse, text 12. Tasyagnir asyam nirbinam lokapalo visatpanam vacha swamasena vaktavyam yayaso pratipadyate tas his tasya his agni fire asyam mouth nirbinam thus separated Lokapala the directors of material affairs avisad entered padam respective positions vacha by words swaamsena by one's own part vaktavyam speeches yaya by which aso they pratipadyate express agni or heat separated from his mouth and all the directors of material affairs entered into it in their respective positions. By that energy, the living entity expresses himself in words, purport by his divine grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The mouth of the gigantic universal form of the Lord is the source of the speaking power. The director of the fire element is the controlling deity, or the Adidaiva. The speeches delivered are Adhyatma, or bodily functions, and the subject matter of the speeches is material productions, or Adibhuta principle. Okay, so everything depends on Krishna. So therefore, if we're talking about the material creation, it all comes from Krishna and it proceeds through the Virat Rupa, and then all the demigods are manifested from the Virat Rupa. Nothing is independent of Krishna. Either Krishna in its original form as Sham Sundar, or the Narayana forms in the spiritual world, or the first or second Chaturvyuha, or the Vishnu forms in the material world, or the Virat Rupa in the material world. But nothing happens independent of the Lord. This is why material knowledge is so dangerous and misleading. It wants to convince you that there is no connection to God at all. That everything is happening by itself. Whereas here, everything we're reading is dependent on Krishna. Nothing is independent of the Lord. Now, here it's talking about Adhyatma, Adhidaivika, Adhibhutika. This was also, these three forms of material suffering are also discussed in other places. So they have tremendous, let's say, varied understanding. Let's see where that is. Huh? Okay, but now it's here also in this. 1 second. If I don't find this, I'll go over it tomorrow. Okay, I'm not going to find it right now, so we'll go over that tomorrow. Okay, so that's two things we're going to go over tomorrow. All right, so then we'll go to the next verse, text 13. Nirbinam talu varuno lokapalo Visadare Jivayam Senacharasam Yayaso Pratipadyate Nirbinam, separated. Talu, palate. Varuna, the deity controlling air. Lokapala, director of the planets. Avisat, entered. Hare, of the Lord. Jivaya, Amsena, with the part of the tongue. Cha, also. Rasam, taste. Yaya, by which. Aso, the living entity. Pratipadyate, expresses. When the palate of the gigantic form was separately manifested, Varuna, the director of air in the planetary systems, entered therein, and thus the living entity has the facility to taste everything with his tongue. Again, it's dependent on the Virat Rupa. When you're talking about the palate, it's in the neck here, and it's related to the sinuses also, and it functions because of the air in the body. Text 14. Nirbine Asvino. I'm sorry. Let go. Nirbine Asvino Nase Vishnur Avisatam Padam Granenam Sena Gandasya Pratipatir Yato Bhavet Nirbine, thus being separated. Asvino, the dual Asvinis. Nase, of the two nostrils. Vishnu, of the Lord. Avisatam, entering. Padam, post. Granena, amsena, by partially smelling. Gandasya, aroma. Patipati, experience. Yata, whereupon. Bhavet, becomes. When the Lord's two nostrils separately manifested themselves, the dual Aswini Kumaras entered them in their proper positions, and because of this, the living entities can smell the aromas of everything. So, due to the Virat Rupa body, everything coming is in the material world is coming from that. So, whether it's the ability to smell, ability to taste, ability to see, ability to act, etc. It's all going to be related to the Virat Rupa, which is a material manifestation of the Lord. It's a temporary manifestation. It's only there for the material creation. Okay, text 15. Nirbine aksini tvasta lokapalo visad vibo chakshusam sena rupanam pratipatir yato bhavet nirbine, thus being separated. Akshini, the eyes. Tvasta, the sun. Lokapala, director of light. Avisad, entered. Vibho, of the great. Chakshasa amsena, by the part of the eyesight. Rupanam, of the forms. Patipati, experience. Yata, by which. Bhavet, becomes. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter the two eyes of the gigantic form of the Lord were separately manifested. The sun, the director of light, entered them, with partial representation of eyesight, and thus the living entities can have vision of forms. Text 16. Nirbinani asa charmani
निर्भिन्नानि अस्य चर्माणि
lokapalo nilo visat
लोकपालो नीलो विशात्
pranenam sena samsparsam
प्राणिनां सेन संस्पर्शं
yena so pratipadyate
येनासो प्रतिपद्यते
nirbinanani
निर्भिन्नानि
nirbinani yeah, okay. Being separated
being separated
asya
asya
of the gigantic form
of the gigantic form
charmani
Charmani
skin
skin
lokapala
Kuala
the director
the director
anila
Nila
air
A
avisat
Avisat
entered
entered
pranena
Pranena
amsena
Amsena
the part of the breathing
the part of breathing
samsparsam
Samsparsham
touch
touch
yena
Yena
by which
by which
aso
Asau
the living entity
the living entity
pratipadyate
Pratipadyate
can experience. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. When there was a manifestation of skin separated from the gigantic form, Anila, the deity, directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge. Tactile means something that you can feel with your hands or your body. Okay, text 17. Karnav asya vinirbino
Karnav asya vidvinno
disanyam swam vivishur disa
Disnyam swam divishurdishaah
shrotre nam sena sabdasya
Shrotre namsena shabdasya
siddhim yena prapadyate
Siddhim yena prapadyate
karno the ears
Karno the ears
asya
Asya
of the gigantic form
of the gigantic form
vinirbino
Nirbhinno
being thus separated
being thus separated
disanyam
Sinyam
the controlling deity
controlling deity
swam
Swam
own
own
vivishu
Divishu
entered
entered
disa
Disha
of the directions
the directions
sotrena
Shrotrena
amsena
Amsena
with the hearing principles
the hearing principle
sabdasya
Shabdasya
of the sound
of the sound
siddhim
Siddhim
perfection
perfection
yena
Yena
by which
by which
prapadyate
Prapadyate
is experienced.
is experienced
When the ears of the gigantic form became manifested, all the controlling deities of the directions entered into them with the hearing principles by which all the living entities hear and take advantage of sound. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The ear is the most important instrument in the body of the living entity. Sound is the most important medium for carrying the message of distant and unknown things. The perfection of all sound or knowledge enters through the ear and makes one's life perfect. The entire Vedic system of knowledge is received by oral reception only, and thus sound is the most important source of knowledge. So that proves that reading is not as good as hearing. This makes it very clear, this verse. Hearing the Vedas is much more significant than simply reading the Vedas. Okay, text 18. Tvacham asya vinirbinam
Vacham asya nirbhinnam
vivishur disanyam oshadi
Vivishu Disnyam Oshadi
amsena romabi kandum
Amsena Romabi Kandum
yairaso pratipadyate.
Ye Raso Pratipadyate
Tvacham
Vacham
skin
skin
asya
Asya
of the gigantic form
of the gigantic form
vinirbinam
Nirbhinnam
being separately manifested
being separately manifested
vivisu
Vivisu
entered
entered
the sinyam
Sinyam
the controlling deity
controlling deity
oshadi
Osadi
sensations
sensation Romabi
through the hairs on the body
through hairs of the body
kandum
Kandum
itching
itching
yai
Yay
by which
by which
Aso,
aso,
the living entity,
the living entity,
Pratipadyate,
pratipadyate,
experiences.
experiences.
When there was a separate manifestation of skin, the controlling deities of sensations and their different parts entered into it, and thus the living entities feel itching and happiness due to touch. So itching is not so pleasant, but touch, when it's gentle, is very pleasing. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For sense perception, there are two principal items, touch and itching. And both of them are controlled by the skin and hairs on the body. According to Shi Vishwanatha Chakravarti, the controlling deity of touch is the air passing within the body, and the controlling deity of the hairs on the body is Osadya. For the skin, the object of perception is touch, and for the hairs on the body, the object of perception is itching. Yeah, if you cut the hairs on your body, you will not feel itching so much. But when you have hairs on your body, you get a lot of itches. That's because of the air passing through the hairs. Okay, text 19. Medram tasya vinirminam
Nidram tasya vinirminnam,
swadisinyam cha ka upavisat
svadisnyam ka upavisat,
reta sam sena yena sav
veta samsena ena sav,
anandam pratipadyate.
anandam pratipadyate.
Medram, genitals, tasya,
Tasya,
of the gigantic form,
of the gigantic form.
vinirminam,
Vinirminam,
being separated,
being separated.
swadisinyam,
Svadisnyam,
own position,
own position.
ka,
Ka,
Brahma,
Brahma,
the original living creature,
the original living creature.
upavisat,
Upavisat,
entered,
entered.
ritasa amsena,
Veta samsena,
with the part of the semen,
the part of the semen.
yena,
Yena,
by which
by which
aso,
asav,
the living entity,
living entity.
anamdan,
Anandam,
sex pleasure,
sex pleasure.
pratipadyate,
Pratipadyate,
experiences. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. When the genitals of the gigantic form separated, of the gigantic form separately became manifest, then Prajapati, the original living creature, entered into them with his partial semen, and thus the living entities can enjoy sex pleasure. And notice there's no purport there, but in other places Prabhupada explains this. That is, the sex pleasure is due to the liquid covering of the genitals, and it gives a euphoric feeling. That is misleading also in one sense, but it's necessary so that people will engage in sexual activity for procreation. If it was not enjoyable, people wouldn't do it. Okay, so then text 20. Gudam pumso vinirbinam
Budam pumso vinirpinnam,
mitro lokesa avisat
mitro lokesha avisat,
payun am sena yenaso
payunam sena enasau,
visargam pratipadyate.
visargam pratipadyate.
Gudam,
Gudam,
evacuating outlet.
evacuating outlet.
Pumsa,
Pumsa,
of the gigantic form.
of the gigantic form.
Vinir binam, being
Vinirpinam,
separately manifested.
separately manifested.
Mitra,
Mitra,
the sun god.
the sun god.
Loka Isha,
Loka Isha,
the director named Mitra.
director named Mitra.
Avisat,
Avisat,
entered.
entered.
Payuna Amsena,
Payuna amsena,
with the partial evacuation process.
the partial evacuation process.
Yena,
Yena,
by which
by which
Aso,
Asau,
the living entity.
the living entity.
Visargam,
Sargam,
evacuation.
evacuation.
Pratipadyate,
Pratipadyate,
performs.
performs.
The evacuating channel Translation: the evacuating channel separately became manifest, and the director named Mitra entered into it with partial organs of evacuation. Thus, the living entities are able to pass stool and urine. So you see, none of these things are independent of the Virat Rupa, who is a temporary form of Krishna. And this is explaining how we can engage in these different functions of the body: eating, sleeping, mating, defending, all these things. This is the origin of them, and it's coming originally from Virat Rupa with the help of the demigods. Text 21. Hastav asya vinirbinav
Hastav asya vinirvinnav
Indra swar patiravisat
Indra swarpatiravisat
Vartayam sena purusho
Vatayam sena puruso
Yaya ritim prapadyate.
Yaya vrittim prapadyate.
Hasto,
Hasto,
hands.
hands.
Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
gigantic form.
Vinirbino,
Nirbino,
being separately manifested.
being separately manifested.
Indra,
Indra,
the king of heaven.
the king of heaven.
Swapati,
Swapati,
the ruler of heavenly planets.
the ruler of heavenly planets.
Avisat,
Avisat,
entered into it.
entered into it.
Vartaya,
Vataya,
Amsena,
Amsena,
with partial mercantile principles.
the partial mercantile principles.
Purusha,
Purusha,
the living entity.
the living entity.
Yaya,
Yaya,
by which.
by which.
Ritim,
Vrittim,
business of livelihood.
business of livelihood.
Prapadyate,
Prapadyate,
transacts.
transacts.
Thereafter, when the hands of the gigantic form separately became manifested, Indra, the ruler of the heavenly planets, entered into them, and thus the living entity is able to transact business for his livelihood. Very interesting verse. Text 22. So that's why when you make a deal, you shake hands, right? And then when you're trying to explain something, you use your hand, So it's all about bunnia business. Atmanam chasya nirbinam. This is 25, right? Oh, no, I'm sorry. 22, yeah. Padav asya vinirbino.
Padav asya vinirbinnau.
Lokesho Vishnuravisat.
Lokesho Vishnuravisat.
Gatya swam sena purusho.
Satya swamsena puruso.
Yaya prapyam prapadyate.
Yaya prapyam prapadyate.
Pado, the
Padav,
legs.
legs.
Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
the gigantic form.
Vinirbino,
Vinirbinnau,
being manifested separately.
being manifested separately.
Loka Isha Vishnu,
Loka Isha Vishnu,
the demigod Vishnu.
demigod Vishnu,
Not the personality of Godhead.
not the personality of Godhead.
Avisat,
Avisat,
entered.
entered.
Gatya,
Gatya,
by the power of movement.
by the power of movement.
Swa Amsena,
Swamshena,
with his own parts.
with his own parts.
Purusha,
Purusha,
living entity.
living entity.
Yaya,
Yaya,
by which.
by which.
Prapyam,
Prapyam,
destination.
destination.
Prapadyate,
Prapadyate,
reaches.
reaches.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and a demigod named Vishnu, not the personality of Godhead, entered with partial movement. This helps the living entity move to his destination. So now we're hearing these things. Now we understand how a body is produced in the womb of a mother. All the demigods are involved in it. It doesn't happen by itself, obviously. We know that. It doesn't happen by itself. And the mother doesn't know how it's happening. But it's just like now we're building our temple in Bellevue. We have to employ all kinds of different experts to build it. So there's an expert for mechanical things. There's an expert for electricity. There's an expert for digging and breaking things. There's an expert for concrete. There's an expert for this. There's an expert for that. So in the same way, to build this body, all these different experts have to be involved. They're all demigods. It doesn't happen just like that. See, it's a lot more complicated than we think. Well, we don't really think. We just, an illusion all the time. Thinking it all happens by accident. Okay, so text 23. Bud, yeah.
It says demigod named Vishnu. So Vishnu is not a demigod, right?
No, it's another person named Vishnu. He's a demigod, not Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but there's a demigod named Vishnu also. Just like, I'm sure there's somebody else that has your name in India, right? It's like that. Buddhim chasya vinirbinam vak isho disnyam avisat bodhinam sena bodhavyam
bodhinam shena bodhavyam
pratipatir yato bhavet.
pratipattir yato bhavet.
Buddhim,
Buddhim,
intelligence.
intelligence.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
the gigantic form.
Vinirbinam,
Nirbinam,
being separately manifested.
being separately
Vak
manifested.
Isha,
Vak Isha,
Brahma,
Brahma,
Lord of the Vedas.
Lord of the Vedas.
Disinyam.
Disanyam,
Notice this word disinyam means the controlling power. Controlling power. Avisat,
Avisat,
entered in.
entered in.
Bodhena,
Bodhena,
Amsena,
Amsena,
with his part of intelligence.
intelligence.
Bodhavyam,
Bodhavyam,
the matter of understanding.
the matter of understanding.
Pratipati,
Pratipatti,
understood.
understood.
Yata,
Yata,
by which,
by which,
Bhavet,
Bhavet,
so becomes. When the intelligence of the gigantic form separately became manifest, Brahma, the Lord of the Vedas, entered into it with the partial power of understanding, and thus an object of understanding is experienced by the living entities. So you see, nothing is independent of the Lord. And the demigods get their empowerment from the Lord in the form of the Virat Rupa to do things in the material world, and get things done. Nobody does things haphazardly on their own. Everybody's completely dependent on the Lord. Text 24. You see how complicated it is to form a body? Look at all these verses that we're reading. Hridayam chasya nirbinam
Hridayam chasya nirbinam,
chandrama disinyam avisad.
chandrama dishnam avisat.
So you see this word disinyam, which means the controlling power. Manasam sena yinaso
Manasam sena enasau,
vikriyam pratipadyate.
vikriyam pratipadyate.
Hridayam,
Hridayam,
heart.
heart.
Ja, also. Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
gigantic form.
Nirbinam,
Nirbinam,
being manifested separately.
being manifested separately.
Chandrama,
Chandrama,
the moon demigod.
the moon demigod.
Disinyam,
Disnyam,
with controlling power.
with controlling powers.
Avisad,
Avisat,
entered into.
entered into.
Manasa,
Manasa,
Amsena,
Amsena,
partly with mental activity.
partly with mental activities.
Yena,
Yena,
by which.
by which.
Aso,
Aso,
the living entity.
the living entity.
Vikriyam,
Vikriyam,
resolution.
resolution.
Pratipadyate,
Pratipadyate,
transacts.
transacts.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. After that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered the moon demigod with partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct his mental speculations. So the moon is a subtle planet. That's why you've never gone there. And it's related to the mind. You see, nothing is independent. This is the main thing we're learning. Nothing is independent. And the way a body is made is not haphazard. It's controlled by the demigods who get the controlling power from the Virat Rupa, which gets its power from Krishna. So what the scientists are saying is complete nonsense. It all happened by accident. It's not possible. Text 25. Atmanam chasya nirbinam
Atmanam chasya nirbinnam
abhimano visatpadam
abhimano vishatpadam
karmanam sena yenaso
karmanam shena enaso
kartavyam pratipadyate.
kartavyam pratipadyate.
Atmanam,
Atmanam,
false ego.
false ego.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
of the gigantic form.
Nirbinam,
Nirbinnam,
being separately manifested.
being separately manifested.
Abhimana,
Abhimanam,
false identification.
false identification.
Avisat,
Avisat,
entered.
entered.
Padam,
Padam,
in position.
in position.
Karmana,
Karmana,
activities.
activity.
Amsenam,
Amsena,
by the part.
by the part.
Yena,
Yena,
by which.
by which.
Aso,
Asau,
the living entity.
the living entity.
Kartavyam,
Kartavyam,
objective activities.
objective activities.
Pratipadyate,
Pratipadyate,
takes in.
takes in.
Thereafter, the materialistic ego of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered Rudra, the controller of false ego, with his own partial activities by which the living entity transacts his objective actions. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The false ego of materialistic identity was controlled by the demigod Rudra, an incarnation of Lord Shiva. So it's not just one Rudra. I think there's 8 or 9 different Rudras. They're expansions of Lord Shiva. Rudra is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord who controls the mode of ignorance within material nature. The activities of the false ego are based on the objective of the body and mind. That's an important statement. The activities of the false ego are based on the objective of the body and mind. Most persons conducted by the false ego are controlled by Lord Shiva. When one reaches a finer version of ignorance, he falsely thinks of himself as the Supreme Lord. That egoistic conviction of the conditioned soul is the last snare of the illusory energy which controls the entire material world. There's a lot of people with that last snare nowadays, all over the world, not just in India. And they claim themselves God. That's the last snare of ignorance. Okay, so we'll do one more. One more. Text 26. Sattvam chasya vinirbinam
Sattvam chasya vinirbinnam
mahandisinyam upavisat
mahan disnyam upavisat
chittenam sena yenaso
chittenam sena enasau
vijnanam pratipadyate.
vijnanam pratipadyate.
Sattvam,
Sattvam,
consciousness.
consciousness.
Cha,
Cha,
also.
also.
Asya,
Asya,
of the gigantic form.
the gigantic form.
Vinirbinam, being
Vinirbinnam,
separately manifested.
being separately manifested.
Mahan,
Mahan,
the total energy.
total energy.
Mahatattva,
Mahatattva,
Disenyam,
disanyam,
with control.
with control.
Upavisat,
Upavisat,
entered into.
entered into.
Chittena,
Chittena,
Amsena,
Amshena,
along with his part of consciousness.
along with his part of consciousness.
Yena,
Yena,
by which.
by which.
Aso,
Asau,
the living entity.
the living entity.
Vijnanam,
Jnanam,
specific knowledge.
specific knowledge.
Pratipadyate,
Pratipadyate,
cultivates.
cultivates.
Thereafter, when his consciousness separately manifested itself, the total energy, Mahatattva, entered with his consciousness, with his conscious part. Thus, the living entity is able to conceive specific knowledge. Haribol. Text 27. Shir Shino Sya Yor Darara Padbyam Padbyam
Sishnosya Dur Dara Patyam
Kam Nabe Udapadyata
Kam Nabe Udapadyata
Gunanam Ritayo Yesu
Gunanam Rutayo Yeshu
Pratyante Suradaya
Pratyante Suradya
Shirshana
Sishna
head
Head
Asya
Asya
of the gigantic form.
the gigantic form
Yo,
Dyav
the heavenly planets.
the heavenly planets
Dara,
Dara
earthly planets.
earthly planets
Padbyam,
Padya
on his legs.
on his legs
Kam,
Kam
the sky.
the sky
Nabe,
Nabe
from the abdomen.
from the abdomen
Udapadyata,
Udapadyata
became manifested.
became manifested
Gunanam,
Gunanam
of the three modes of nature.
of the three modes of nature
Ritaya,
Rutaya
reactions.
reactions
Yesu,
Yesu
in which
in which
Pratyante,
Pratyante
manifest.
manifest
Suraadaya,
Suradaya
the demigods and others.
the demigods and others.
Translation. Thereafter, from the head of the gigantic form, the heavenly planets were manifested, and from his legs, the earthly planets, and from his abdomen, the sky separately manifested themselves. Within them, the demigods and others also were manifested in terms of the modes of material nature. Okay, we'll stop right there, and we'll continue that tomorrow. What time is it now? Almost 7:10. Yeah, I did want to discuss something else. So, there are two very nice verses a little later on in the third canto, 9th chapter, 9th verse. It says, "O my Lord, the material miseries are without factual existence for the soul. Yet, as long as the conditioned soul sees the body as meant for sense enjoyment, he cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries, being influenced by your external energy." So, in other words, the soul is not really affected by material miseries. But as long as the conditioned soul considers the body as an instrument for sense enjoyment, the conditioned soul cannot get out of the entanglement of material miseries and is influenced by the external energy. And Prabhupada writes in purport, the whole trouble of the living entity in material existence is that he has an independent conception of life. He is always dependent on the rules of the Supreme Lord in both the conditioned and liberated states. But by the influence of the external energy, the conditioned soul thinks himself independent of the supremacy of the personality of Godhead. His constitutional position is to dovetail himself with the desire of the Supreme Will. But as long as he does not do so, he is sure to drag on in the shackles of material bondage. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.55, Prajahati yada kaman sarvam partha manogatan. He has to give up all sorts of plans manufactured by mental concoction. The living entity has to dovetail himself with the Supreme Will. That will help him to get out of the entanglement of material existence. So here, Prabhupada, in one verse, in one short purport, he explains the real problem of life and how to get out of it and go back to Godhead. This is what's called significant literature. In a few sentences, he explains the whole problem of material life and how to get out of that problem. Is there anybody listening? Very few people. They're not interested. They want to go on their birth, death, old age, and disease. It's very unfortunate, and we see it. People are suffering everywhere, and they're all arguing about, well, how can we stop this? How can we stop it? But when it's explained to them how to stop it, they don't accept it. This is how crazy people have become. And Prabhupada says the constitutional position is to dovetail himself with the desire of the Supreme Will. So in the second chapter, 46th verse, Prabhupada says in the purport that to understand the purpose of the Vedas without being attached to the rituals only, and no desire to be elevated to the heavenly planets. This is when we make real spiritual advancement. We no longer have, we understand the purpose of the Vedas is to help us go back to Godhead without being attached to the rituals only. Most people are attached to the rituals. The Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, they're all ritualized. The Sri Vaishnavas, everything is ritual. Right? But one should not be attached to the rituals only. And one should not have a desire to be elevated to heavenly planets. Then the second chapter, 47th verse, Bhagavad Gita. Work with results becomes cause of bondage. Any attachment, positive or negative, is the cause of bondage. So, we don't know how to work. We think you work for the results. But that's the cause of bondage. We have to learn to work without attachment to the results. And how do we know there's no attachment? We offer the result to Krishna. It's not that we ignore the result. We offer the result to Krishna. And then second chapter, 48th verse says, following Krishna's dictation is real yoga. Karishye vachanam tava. Whatever you say, Krishna, that's what I'm going to do. That's real yoga. And in Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, verse 70 and 71, what does it say? It says, Iha kamam yasarvam pumam charti nispraha nirmano nirhankara sasantim adhigachati. If you memorize this one verse, you got everything there. 271. And it says, a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from material desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. That's what the Mayavadi is trying to do. When you desire only to please Krishna, that's real desirelessness. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Isha Vaishyam Idam Sarvam. That's first mantra of the Isha Upanishad. And therefore, he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. Everybody wants shanti, shanti, shanti. Right? At the end of every ritual or puja, they do shanti pat, shanti pat. It's the big thing. Oh, we can't forget shanti pat. Right? But they don't understand how to get Shanti. They can chant the Shanti pa, but they don't understand. You have to give up all material desires and replace them with spiritual desires to please Krishna. Then you'll have Shanti. But as long as we have desires to satisfy for sense gratification, we'll never have Shanti. We'll never have peace. So in 270, in the purport it says, that a Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the river that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. That's a significant statement. Although the desires are present, but one has lost all inclination for material sense gratification. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean, and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires, even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruit of workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. They have a lot of spiritual desires to please Krishna, but no material desires. Whereas the Mayavadis say you have to give up all desires, even the desire to please Krishna. That's not possible. That's nonsense, basically. Okay, so I wanted to mention that. And then tomorrow, we'll go over the next verse, 3, 9, 10, which is it's one of those verses you can spend 10, 20 days discussing. Very, very profound. But we'll go over that tomorrow. Are there any questions? So there's two things I have to look up, which I will. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Haribo.
If the wind is one of the elements or air, it's same thing. Why did the deity attack it?
If what? I didn't understand.
If the air is one of the elements,
One of the elements.
yeah, why did the wind devotee attack it?
Which verse are you looking at? Third canto, 6th chapter, which verse?
I just heard it. I was not listening to which verse. I only wanted to listen to the interesting parts.
They're all interesting. You missed them all then. You just got one.
Why do you think?
Okay, so when there was a manifestation of skin separated from the gigantic form, Anila, the deity directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge. Is that what you're talking about?
I think so.
And your question is, again, say what your question is.
If the wind is one of the elements, why did the deity attack it?
Maybe you heard wrong.
I think I heard wrong.
Yeah, you didn't. It doesn't attack it. Anila, the deity directing the wind, entered with partial touch, and thus the living entities can realize tactile knowledge. Well, tactile means when you touch something, like you touch something hot, you can feel the heat, or you touch something cold, you can feel the coldness. Right?
Oh, that made me think of one more question. Only about those two. Is it possible Is it possible for a human being to touch hot and cold at the same time?
Well, you have two hands, right? So one can be on hot and the other one
No,
can
like
be on.
only one hand. Like if it's hot and cold.
Well, it depends. If it's hot on one side, cold on the other side, yeah, you could touch it and feel hot on one side and cold on the other side.
Okay.
All that is called tactile. Tactile knowledge. Knowledge you receive by touching. Okay.
I think Maharaj, I think this is very interesting facts we are learning today from the verses. I think the one is the heart comes after all the like the legs, hands manifested. Typically, I think scientific they believe the heart comes first.
Which verse you looking at?
So the heart is described after the legs and the hands and
Which
the
verse?
taste.
Which verse?
Is the one. I think I moved away from the. Okay, let me go here.
Thereafter, the legs of the gigantic form separately became manifest, and a demigod named Vishnu, not the personality of God, entered with partial movement. This helps the living entity move to his destination. That's not it.
Yeah, so skin, then.
Okay, after that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself,
Yeah,
and into it entered the moon
you
demigod
got it with partial.
with partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct his mental speculation. So you see,
Yeah,
even today, people connect the mind with the heart.
mm-hmm.
It's almost synonymous. They say, well, whatever thoughts you have in your mind or whatever desires you have in your heart, that is determine what you're going to do. So you see, after that, the heart of the gigantic form separately manifested itself, and into it entered the moon demigod with partial mental activity. Thus, the living entity can conduct his mental speculations.
Yeah, so the here it says the heart is manifested after I think even intelligence, legs, hands,
Yes.
genitals, and
What
skin,
does that
tongue.
tell you? What does that tell you?
So these verses are also in the order of how they are manifested, right? Because typically the scientific understanding is the
Yes, a
heart.
gradual
Heart.
process, yeah.
Typical the scientific knowledge is the heart generated first. From the heart, everything else manifests.
Oh, okay.
That is
see.
the point. Yeah.
Where did you read that?
I think my I don't have a reference, but through videos and reading, that's my first. What comes first is out of the cells is the first. The heart is formed, and then everything else next.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, anyway, nothing happens without without relationship with the Virat Rupa.
Yeah.
So it's all there pre-existing, and then it gets what you would call partially manifest in the human body, right? And under the control of a demigod. So you
And
see, there's nothing happens by accident. That's the whole point.
so the living entity is basically partially mimicking the energies are partially manifesting in a living entity.
Yes.
And
The living entity is not all in all.
I don't know. Yeah.
It only has a partial amount of Shakti, let's put it like that. And it makes sense. We are all limited. The whole idea is to understand that we are dependent on God for everything we do, whether it's good or bad. No one is independent. That's the whole point.
Yeah, one clarification I also got today is so maybe I can double check. So far I considered Shiva is one of the Rudras because but today I came to learn that Rudras are expansion of Shiva.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
before my understanding was Shiva was one of the Rudras,
No.
and who is prominent as
Right.
supreme personality of Godhead. Okay.
If there's a king of wind, is there a king of all the elements? Not just wind?
That would be Krishna himself, right?
No, like, is there, like, there's one king of one element individually? Like,
Yeah, just like your dad works in a company,
yeah, I'm talking about.
and there's a one person that takes care of one aspect of the company, another person another aspect. But there's what's called a CEO.
Okay.
It means that they're the person that's the general manager of all the other people.
Oh, I'm not talking about a king that rules all the elements at once. I'm talking about a king that is one element earth, one element fire, like that, like individually.
Those are demigods.
one.
Those are called demigods. They're not God in the full sense. They're demigods.
Oh, okay, they're demigods.
They have certain responsibilities. They're specific responsibilities. So one takes care of the wind, one takes care of the
Earth.
water, one takes, like Bhumi is in charge of the earth. Chandra is in charge of the moon. You see, everything in the universe has a person behind it. Nothing is independent. Just like electricity, you see these lights are on, right? But if you follow the wires, you'll end up Puget Sound Energy, where there's hundreds of people working to make sure these lights light up when you open the switch. Nothing is that light does not light itself. There's a whole organization behind it, and there's one chief executive officer, CEO, that's managing the whole thing, and he has a lot of people working for him in different sections to get everything working.
Okay, but one more question. All the demigods gather up in the one place like sky, or do they just stay in their elements like Earth?
They all have their own planet. They all have their own planet.
Oh, so it's like Earth has the Earth King?
Yes.
But it also has all the other kings because
Yes. And then there's the
because
super
it
king.
holds all the
There's the
elements,
super king that controls all the other kings.
which is Krishna.
Yes. Haribol. Now, in school, they would say, we don't believe anything that you just said because we think there's no God and there's no controller and there are no demigods. It all happened by accident. You see how nonsense they are? They're trying to convince you of something that's not true. Well, that's the point. Nothing happens by accident. You know, the coat you have on right now, did that happen by accident? The pants you have on, did that happen by accident? The carpet that you're stepping on now, did it happen by accident? All right. But they're saying that everything happened by accident. You see how crazy they are. Nothing happens by accident. You don't pass stool by accident. No, you're obliged to do it.
Yeah.
You're forced to do it. Nothing happens by accident. Okay.
Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Mandamui savadana mate.
Bandamui sabadana mate.
Jehara prasadi bai ge baba turiya jai. Krishna
प्राप्ति
prapti
हो जय होते
Krishna prapti
गुरुमुख पद्मा वक्या चित्ते कोरिया क्या I know. Arana korio mane asha. Rucharane rati esudamagati. Gati जैसे सादे पूरे सर्व आशा चक्षुदान दिलो जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्यदायेंद्र में प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते आदि आदि न सजते हृदय गुषु त्रिभुवन रचरितो करुणा सिंधु आदा मदनर बंधु नालो लीनालो केरा जीवाना आहा प्रभु कोरो दया देहा मोरे पद छाया एबे बाय दशति भुवाना पतिता पवाना
जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा जय प्रभुपदा
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्यानामिने Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pashatya Vishatyarine Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Jaya Vishkapad, Paramahansa Pararachikachasta Tarasatara Shishi Maharaj, Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Haridas Prem Shri Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Gautam Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapura Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Jamuna Maya Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the Samudra Vedas. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Samudra. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavana Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Haribol. Namaha Vishwadaksha. Namaste. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Ki Jai.
The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord at birth after birth. He is from ecstatic preeminence emanate. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. O spiritual master, the ocean of the mercy, the friend of the poor. O Lord, master of the devotees. O Lanka Goswami. O master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds.